They picked the wrong car to block that day, a mistake that would cost them millions and change protest laws forever. Marcus Chen had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, earned a Purple Heart, and built a successful cybersecurity firm from scratch. But on that sweltering July afternoon in Portland, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the woman gasping in pain beside him, his wife Sarah, 8 months pregnant and going into premature labor. The protesters blocking Highway 26 had no idea they were about to create their own worst nightmare. They thought they were making a statement about climate change. Instead, they were about to learn why you never, ever mess with a combat veteran whose pregnant wife needs a hospital. This isn't just a story about a roadblock. It's about what happens when self-righteous activism collides with a man who knows 47 different ways to neutralize a threat and has the technical skills to destroy your entire movement without throwing a single punch. By the time Marcus was done, those protesters would wish they'd chosen literally any other car to stop that day. Marcus Chen wasn't the kind of man who looked for trouble. At 35, he'd already seen enough conflict for 3 lifetimes. His mornings started at 500 with a 5-mile run through Portland's Forest Park, a habit that kept the nightmares at bay better than any therapy the VA had offered. By 700, he was at his desk, running Chen Security Solutions, a cybersecurity firm that protected everyone from local credit unions to Fortune 500 companies. His employees knew him as quiet but fair, the kind of boss who remembered birthdays and never asked anyone to work hours he wouldn't work himself. What they didn't know was that their mild-mannered CEO could disassemble and reassemble an M4 carbine, blindfolded in under 90 seconds, or that the slight limp he carried came from shrapnel that nearly took his leg in Kandahar. Sarah had changed everything. They'd met at a charity event for wounded veterans, where she was coordinating volunteers. While other women had been intimidated by his silence and the 1,000-yard stare he sometimes got, Sarah had simply handed him a clipboard and said, "You look like you need something to do with your hands." That was 4 years ago. Now, she was his anchor, the one who could pull him back when the memories got too loud. Their townhouse in northwest Portland was filled with her watercolor paintings and his collection of vintage computer parts, an odd combination that somehow worked just like them. The pregnancy hadn't been planned, but Marcus had never seen Sarah happier. She'd transformed their spare room into a nursery with military precision, researching every product down to the chemical composition of the paint. Marcus had installed a state-of-the-art security system that could probably protect the Pentagon, earning him weeks of good-natured teasing from his wife. "The baby's biggest threat is going to be your cooking," she'd laughed, watching him install the 5th camera. That July afternoon started like any other. Sarah was at her sister's baby shower in Beaverton, and Marcus was wrapping up a security audit for a local bank. His phone buzzed at 3:47 p.m. "Marcus?" Sarah's voice was tight with pain. "Something's wrong. I'm bleeding." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Marcus was already moving before she finished the sentence, laptop abandoned, car keys in hand. His army training kicked in: assess, adapt, act. "How bad?" He kept his voice calm, even as his heart hammered. "Bad? Emma's calling 911, but..." A sharp gasp cut her off. "I'm coming. 15 minutes. He was already calculating routes. Highway 26 would be fastest this time of day. "Stay on the line with me." Marcus drove with the same focused intensity he'd used, navigating Humvees through hostile territory. Every light, every merge, every lane change was executed with precision. Sarah's breathing filled the car through the Bluetooth connection, each laboured breath twisting the knife of fear deeper into his chest. "Talk to me, babe. How's our little warrior?" Sarah managed a weak laugh. "Kicking up a storm. Think she gets that from you. Definitely from you. I've seen you in spin class." He kept the conversation light, monitoring her voice for signs of shock while his speedometer crept past 80. The Beaverton exit was 5 miles away when he saw them, a wall of people spread across all 4 lanes of Highway 26, holding signs and banners. "Climate action now. Shutdown for shutdown. No Planet B." Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. He'd seen protesters before, even supported some causes, but right now they might as well have been enemy combatants blocking his convoy. He slowed, scanning for gaps. The protesters had chosen their spot. Concrete barriers on both sides meant no shoulder access. Cars were already backing up behind him, horns beginning to blare. "Marcus? Why are we stopping?" Sarah's voice carried a new edge of panic. "Protesters on the highway, looking for a way through." "Oh God, Marcus, I think my water just broke." The words hit him like an IED blast. Premature labour at 32 weeks. Every birthing class they'd attended, every book Sarah had made him read, came flooding back. The statistics weren't good. Marcus rolled down his window as protesters approached, their faces glowing with righteous purpose. A young woman with purple hair and a megaphone was leading the group, directing others to link arms. "Please," Marcus called out, his voice carrying the authority of command. "Medical emergency. My wife's in labour. We need through." The purple-haired woman, her shirt identified her as Skylar, barely glanced at him. "Sorry, but that's what they all say. We're not moving until the governor agrees to declare a climate emergency. There's a hospital 10 miles back if you turn around." "She won't make 10 miles. Marcus kept his voice level, but something in his eyes made Skylar take a half step back. "She's bleeding. Premature labour. Every second counts." Skylar's jaw set stubbornly. "Then you should blame the government for forcing us to take dramatic action. We're saving the planet for your child's future." A young man with a philosophy degree's worth of facial hair chimed in. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, man. This is bigger than one person." Marcus felt something cold and familiar settle over him, the same calm that had descended before every firefight. These people had no idea what they'd just done. They'd made themselves obstacles between him and his objective. In Afghanistan, obstacles were eliminated. But this wasn't Afghanistan. These weren't enemy combatants. They were misguided kids who thought blocking traffic was revolution. "Sarah, honey, I need you to breathe for me. In through the nose, out through the mouth." He pitched his voice to carry through the phone, while his mind ran through options. Ram through? No. Despite every instinct screaming at him to floor it, he'd probably kill someone, definitely go to prison, and Sarah needed him free and whole. Wait for police? The distant sirens suggested they were coming, but not fast enough. Every emergency response vehicle would be stuck in the same traffic. Which left option 3, the one these protesters had never considered when they chose to block a road. They'd never faced someone with Marcus's very particular set of skills, and absolutely nothing to lose. "You've got 30 seconds to move," Marcus announced, his voice carrying the flat certainty of a man who'd made harder decisions under fire. "After that, I get creative." Skylar laughed, actually laughed. "What are you going to do, tough guy? Run us over? Arrest us? We know our rights." Marcus smiled then, and something in that expression made the philosophy major step back. "No, I'm going to destroy everything you've worked for without laying a finger on you. 20 seconds. "Dude's bluffing," someone called out. Hold the line. Marcus was already pulling out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. His company didn't just protect against cyber threats, they had to understand them first. Every person blocking that road had a digital footprint, and Marcus had tools that could follow those footprints anywhere. 10 seconds. Sarah's breathing was getting shallower. In the background, he could hear Emma frantically talking to 911 dispatch, giving their location. 5 seconds. The protesters linked arms tighter, faces set with determination. They'd won this game before. Other drivers had raged, honked, even gotten out to yell. But eventually, everyone turned around or waited for police. That was how civil disobedience worked. Time's up. Marcus's fingers finished their dance across his phone. What the protesters didn't understand was that civil disobedience only worked when your opponent was civilized. Marcus had left civilization somewhere in the Hindu Kush mountains, buried with the 19-year-old private who'd taken a bullet meant for him. The first domino fell within minutes. Skylar's phone buzzed with a fraud alert from her bank, then another, then her credit cards started declining. The philosophy major's phone began playing death metal at maximum volume and wouldn't stop. Another protester found his social media accounts posting increasingly bizarre conspiracy theories about birds being government drones. But Marcus was just getting started. Every organization had pressure points, and protests like this required infrastructure websites to coordinate payment systems for bail funds, social media for recruitment. Marcus's fingers flew across his phone's screen, years of cyber warfare experience focused on a single objective: create enough chaos to clear a path. What the hell? Skylar was staring at her phone in confusion. The protest's main website had just replaced itself with a loop of dancing hamsters. The Instagram's posting random memes, someone else shouted. My phone's calling my ex. The bail fund PayPal is transferring money to the NRA. Chaos rippled through the protesters' ranks. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to be in control, forcing society to pay attention. Instead, their careful organization was collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Marcus rolled forward slowly, not threatening, just insistent. The line of protesters wavered. Some were frantically trying to fix their phones. Others were arguing about whether to hold position. The unified front was crumbling. Move. A protester near the center broke ranks, stumbling aside as his phone started live, streaming his location to his parents with the caption, "Currently committing crimes." The gap widened. Marcus eased through, careful not to hit anyone, even as every instinct screamed at him to floor it. Behind him, the chaos continued to spread. Someone's smartwatch was ordering hundreds of pizzas. Another's laptop was emailing their browser history to their employer. Marcus? Sarah's voice was weaker now. What's happening? I hear sirens. Almost through, baby. 2 minutes to the hospital. As his car cleared the protest line, Marcus allowed himself one glance in the rearview mirror. The organized demonstration had devolved into a cluster of panicking millennials trying to stop their devices from betraying them. Police cars were finally arriving, officers looking bemused at protesters who were now begging to be arrested just to make their phones stop playing Baby Shark on repeat. Marcus shut down his programs with a few taps. He'd made his point. In the digital age, civil disobedience came with new vulnerabilities. Block the wrong person's path, and you might find your entire movement's infrastructure turned against you. But none of that mattered now. The hospital loomed ahead, and Marcus was already calculating the fastest route to the emergency entrance. Sarah's breathing had gone quiet, too quiet. Stay with me, warrior, he whispered. tires screaming as he took the turn into the hospital parking lot. "Both of you, stay with me." The next hours would be a blur of medical terms and beeping machines, of Sarah's hand crushing his as she fought to bring their daughter safely into the world 8 weeks early. But she would make it. They both would. Tough as their parents, the doctors would say. Later, much later, Marcus would learn that the protesters had tried to press charges for the cyber attack. It hadn't gone well. Turns out, when you illegally block a highway and prevent a pregnant woman from reaching medical care, judges aren't sympathetic to your complaints about pranked phones. The protest organization collapsed within days. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. How could activists coordinate when they couldn't be sure their own devices wouldn't betray them? How could they raise funds when donors worried about their information being compromised? Skylar would eventually track Marcus down, showing up at his office with accusations and threats of lawsuits. Marcus had listened patiently, then pulled up a single photo on his monitor. His daughter in the NICU, tubes and wires keeping her alive. 11 minutes, he'd said quietly. That's how close we cut it. 11 minutes later, and she doesn't make it. You want to sue me for some pranks on your phone? Go ahead. But remember, I showed restraint. I could have destroyed your entire life as easily as I disrupted your protest. I chose not to. Make better choices than you did that day. She'd left without another word. The aftermath of the highway incident should have been the end of it. Any reasonable person would have taken the loss, learned the lesson, and moved on. But Skylar Morrison wasn't reasonable. She was a 24-year-old Berkeley graduate with a trust fund, a sociology degree, and the unshakable belief that she was on the right side of history. Marcus discovered this 3 weeks later when his company's firewall flagged an unusual probe. Someone was trying to dig into Chen security solutions, clumsily attempting SQL injections and social engineering attacks that would have been laughable if they weren't so persistent. "Boss, you need to see this," called Tyler, his senior security analyst, from across the office. Marcus walked over, still moving carefully. The adrenaline crash after Sarah's emergency delivery had left him exhausted in ways combat never had. 3 weeks of NICU visits, of watching his daughter fight for every breath, had carved new lines into his face. "Someone's been hitting us hard since Tuesday," Tyler explained, pulling up logs on his monitor. "Amateur hour stuff, but they're determined. They've tried at least 40 different attack vectors." Marcus studied the patterns, recognizing the digital equivalent of an angry toddler beating on a locked door. "Track the source." "Already did," Tyler grinned. "VPN? But they're sloppy. Real IP leaked through a WebRTC request. Traces back to... Oh, this is interesting. Morrison Environmental Justice Foundation." Marcus felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Of course. He'd humiliated Skylar's protest, and now she wanted payback. The smart play would be to simply block the attacks and move on. But Marcus had spent 3 weeks watching his daughter struggle for life because of this woman's self-righteous road blockade. The smart play wasn't on the table anymore. "Tyler, clear my schedule for the afternoon. I'm going to teach someone why you don't pick fights with cybersecurity professionals." What followed was a masterclass in digital warfare. Marcus didn't just defend, he investigated. Every attack attempt left breadcrumbs, and Marcus followed each one with methodical precision. Within hours, he'd mapped out Skylar's entire operation. The Morrison Environmental Justice Foundation was bigger than he'd expected. Funded by Skylar's tech executive father, it employed 12 full-time activists and coordinated protests across the Pacific Northwest. Their website boasted about revolutionary action and by any means necessary rhetoric that would have been amusing if it hadn't nearly cost his daughter's life. Marcus dug deeper. Financial records, email chains, planning documents, all secured with the digital equivalent of a screen door. He found protest plans, donor lists, and something far more interesting: communications with a group called Earth First Collective, which had been flagged by the FBI for escalating beyond civil disobedience into property destruction. Boss? Tyler was watching over his shoulder. Are they serious? On the screen was a planning document for something called Operation Gridlock, a coordinated effort to shut down every major highway in Portland during rush hour. The date was set for 2 weeks away. They're going to get people killed, Tyler breathed. Emergency vehicles won't be able to get through. Marcus thought of Sarah, of those terrifying minutes on Highway 26. How many other pregnant women, heart attack victims, or injured children would be trapped by Skylar's revolution? Not if I have anything to say about it, Marcus said quietly. His fingers were already moving across the keyboard, not in anger this time, but with cold purpose. He started with the Foundation's website, but not in the crude way he'd disrupted the protest. This required finesse. Instead of defacing pages, he made subtle changes. Donation links redirected to climate change charities that worked within the system. Event calendars developed mysterious glitches that showed protests at wrong times or locations. Email lists corrupted slowly, dropping subscribers one by one. To an outside observer, it would look like simple technical difficulties. But for an organization dependent on digital coordination, it was death by 1,000 cuts. Marcus then turned his attention to Skylar personally. Her digital footprint was extensive: Instagram influencer, Twitter activist, TikTok revolutionary. She broadcasted her entire life online, never considering that someone might use that information against her. He didn't destroy her accounts, that would be too obvious. Instead, he became her invisible editor. Her fiery posts about revolution were subtly altered after posting. Shut down the system became shut down systematic waste. Calls for radical action transformed into suggestions for radical compassion. The changes were minor enough that casual readers wouldn't notice, but they completely defanged her message. Her follower engagement plummeted as her content became increasingly milquetoast. But the masterpiece was Operation Gridlock itself. Marcus infiltrated their planning channels and made careful adjustments. The north side blockade was rescheduled an hour earlier when traffic was lightest. The south side team received location updates that would put them at dead-end streets instead of major thoroughfares. Communication channels developed mysterious lag times that would make coordination impossible. He also took out insurance. Every planning document, every communication about the illegal protest was anonymously forwarded to the Portland Police Bureau, the FBI, and every major news outlet in the city. By the time Operation Gridlock launched, law enforcement would be waiting at every location. "You're scary when you're motivated," Tyler observed, watching Marcus work. "I'm a father now," Marcus replied, not looking up from his screens. "These people nearly killed my daughter to make a point about carbon emissions. They want to do it again to hundreds of others. Sometimes the system needs people like us to protect it from people like them." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of NICU visits and digital sabotage. Marcus watched his daughter gradually gain strength, her tiny fingers wrapping around his with surprising force, while simultaneously watching Skylar's organization crumble from within. The Morrison Environmental Justice Foundation began hemorrhaging members as protests consistently failed due to technical difficulties. Donors pulled funding as the organization seemed increasingly incompetent. Internal emails leaked, courtesy of Marcus, showed Skylar becoming increasingly paranoid and dictatorial, accusing longtime allies of sabotage. Operation Gridlock arrived like a wet firecracker. Skylar showed up at her assigned intersection to find it already blocked by police cars. Half her volunteers were at the wrong locations. The other half couldn't coordinate because their encrypted messaging app kept auto-correcting blockade to lemonade. The news coverage was brutal. Environmental groups' revolutionary action turns into comedy of errors, read one headline. Another simply asked, "Is this the most failed protest in Portland history?" But the real blow came when the FBI arrests started. Turns out, planning to intentionally block emergency vehicles crossed the line from civil disobedience into federal crimes. Skylar's trust fund would be going to lawyers instead of revolution. Marcus watched the news coverage from the NICU, his daughter finally breathing without assistance in his arms. Sarah dozed in the chair beside him, exhausted but smiling even in sleep. "Your mom thinks I went too far," he whispered to the baby. "She says I should have just let the authorities handle it, but sometimes the authorities need help. Sometimes dads have to make sure the roads stay clear for other families." His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know it was you." Marcus smiled, typing back with one thumb while cradling his daughter. "Prove it." The number blocked him immediately. Smart girl, she was learning. Tyler would later ask him if he felt guilty about destroying Skylar's organization. Marcus considered the question seriously before answering. "I feel guilty about a lot of things. Things I did in Afghanistan, things I didn't do, but protecting my family, making sure other families can get to hospitals when they need to, no guilt there." Skylar wanted to play revolutionary. She learned that revolutions have casualties, and sometimes you're not the one who gets to choose who they are. The Morrison Environmental Justice Foundation officially dissolved 6 months later. Skylar Morrison disappeared from social media entirely. Her last post, a cryptic message about learning the difference between activism and extremism. Marcus occasionally checked on her through back channels. She'd moved back to Berkeley, enrolled in law school. Maybe she'd learned something. Maybe she'd find legal ways to change the system instead of blocking pregnant women from hospitals. Either way, she'd never forget the lesson. Be very careful whose path you block. You never know what kind of warrior might be behind the wheel. 6 months had passed since Operation Gridlock's spectacular failure. Marcus had settled into a routine mornings with his daughter Lily, now healthy and hitting every developmental milestone like she was attacking them. Afternoons at Chen Security Solutions, evenings helping Sarah with her art studio. The highway incident felt like ancient history, until Detective Raymond Walsh showed up at his office. Walsh was everything a detective should be: rumpled, suit, tired eyes, and the kind of quiet intensity that came from seeing too much. He settled into the chair across from Marcus's desk, like a man who had all the time in the world. "Mr. Chen, I'm investigating a pattern of cyber attacks against several environmental organizations over the past year. Your name keeps coming up." Marcus kept his expression neutral, a skill honed through countless military debriefs. "I run a cybersecurity firm, detective. Our name comes up in a lot of contexts." "True." Walsh pulled out a tablet, swiping through documents. "But this is different. The Morrison Environmental Justice Foundation, Earth First Collective, Green Wave Alliance, all suffered devastating cyber attacks that crippled their operations. All had one thing in common. They'd recently had confrontations with you or your family." "Confrontations?" Marcus leaned back. Detective, one of those groups blocked a highway while my wife was in premature labor. That's not a confrontation. That's attempted murder. Walsh's expression didn't change. I have 3 daughters myself, Mr. Chen. I understand the anger. But taking the law into your own hands. Allegedly, Marcus interrupted. You're here fishing, detective. If you had evidence, we'd be having this conversation downtown with my lawyer present. A ghost of a smile crossed Walsh's weathered face. You're right. I don't have evidence. Yet. But I've been doing this for 23 years, and my gut says you're the common denominator. These weren't random hackers or rival groups. This was personal, professional, military precision, some might say. Marcus maintained eye contact, saying nothing. In interrogation, silence was often your best weapon. Walsh continued, Here's what puzzles me. The attacks were devastating but surgical. No personal data stolen, no finances drained, just organizations methodically dismantled from within. It's almost like someone was sending a message rather than seeking profit. Hypothetically, Marcus said carefully, if someone were to target these organizations, wouldn't they leave digital fingerprints, IP addresses, code signatures, something? You'd think so. Walsh set down his tablet. But our cyber crimes unit says whoever did this was a ghost, used techniques they'd never seen outside of nation-state actors. The kind of skills you might pick up in, say, military intelligence. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. I was infantry detective. My job was kicking down doors, not hacking them. Your DD 214 says different. Intelligence support activity. 3 tours in Afghanistan with a unit that doesn't officially exist. The kind of unit that does a lot more than kick down doors. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Few people had access to those records. Walsh had done his homework. Ancient history, Marcus said evenly. Maybe those skills came in handy when someone threatened your family. Walsh stood, straightening his tie. I'll be honest, Mr. Chen. Part of me, the father part, doesn't blame you. But the detective part has a job to do. These organizations, flawed as they were, had rights. Their members had rights. So did my wife and daughter. Yes, they did. And the protesters who blocked that highway were arrested and charged. The system worked. The system worked after the fact, Marcus countered. After my daughter nearly died, sometimes the system needs acceleration. Walsh studied him for a long moment. Be careful, Mr. Chen. You seem like a good man who did some questionable things for understandable reasons. But there are people pushing for federal charges. Cyberterrorism carries serious time. Then they'd better have more than gut feelings. Walsh headed for the door, then paused. You know what the irony is? Your attacks actually helped our investigation into Earth First Collective. Those leaked documents, you excuse me, that someone anonymously sent to law enforcement? They helped us prevent 3 planned arsons. You might have saved lives. Glad to hear it, Marcus said neutrally. But vigilantism is a dangerous road, Mr. Chen. Today you're targeting groups everyone agrees are problematic. Tomorrow, who decides who deserves digital justice? After Walsh left, Marcus sat alone in his office, considering the detective's words. The man wasn't wrong. The skills Marcus had used came from a dark place, a time when he'd done whatever was necessary to protect his unit and complete the mission. His phone buzzed. Sarah, sending a video of Lily laughing at something off camera. The sound of his daughter's joy washed away the shadows. This was why he'd done it. This was what he'd protected. Tyler knocked and entered. Boss? I caught some chatter you should know about. Someone's been asking questions about you on the dark web. Professional inquiries. Marcus frowned. Show me. Tyler pulled up screenshots from various forums. Someone operating under the handle Justice Seeker was offering significant Bitcoin rewards for information about the Portland cyber vigilante. The posts were sophisticated, written by someone who understood both the technical and legal aspects of what they were hunting. They're not cops, Tyler observed. Too much money being thrown around, private sector. Marcus studied the posts, his tactical mind already analyzing the threat. Someone with resources was hunting him. The question was, were they seeking revenge or recruitment? Enhance our operational security, Marcus ordered. Full protocol, and start a trace on this justice seeker. Carefully. If they're as good as they appear, they'll have countermeasures. You think it's connected to the detective's visit? No, this is something else. Marcus pulled up his encrypted files, reviewing his actions over the past months. He'd made enemies, certainly. But who had both the motivation and resources to mount this kind of search? Over the next week, Marcus played a careful game of digital cat and mouse with Justice Seeker. They were good, very good. Professional training, possibly government background. But Marcus had advantages too. This was his city, his networks, his territory. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lily's pediatrician mentioned offhandedly during a checkup that someone had called claiming to be verifying insurance information but asking unusual questions about the family. They wanted to know about your work specifically, Dr. Patterson said. I found it odd and didn't tell them anything, of course. Marcus thanked her calmly, but internally, alarms were screaming. Someone was mapping his life, his routines, his vulnerabilities. This wasn't just digital reconnaissance anymore. That night, after Sarah and Lily were asleep, Marcus activated protocols he'd hoped never to use again. Safe houses were checked, weapons retrieved from storage. Old contacts from his military days quietly alerted. If someone wanted to bring the physical world into his digital war, they'd find Marcus Chen was equally capable in both domains. The next morning brought answers. Tyler had managed to trace Justice Seeker through a complex web of proxies and shell companies to a surprising source, Prometheus Security International, a private military contractor known for hiring former special operations personnel. Why would a PMC care about your cyber activities? Tyler wondered. Marcus knew. Prometheus had contracts with several major corporations, including energy companies that would benefit from environmental groups being neutralized. They hadn't hired him to stop the attacks they wanted to recruit the attacker. It's a job offer, Marcus realized. They want the Portland cyber vigilante on their payroll. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Chen? The voice was cultured, professional. My name is Victoria Ashford. I represent certain interests that have been impressed by your recent activities. We'd like to discuss a business proposition. Not interested. Please hear me out. We're not law enforcement. We're not seeking prosecution. We're offering you the chance to use your skills legally, with full backing and resources. The kind of work that protects national interests rather than just personal ones. Marcus considered. It was tempting legal cover for his actions, resources to operate at scale, the chance to go after bigger threats than local protesters. I'll think about it, he said finally. Excellent. We'll be in touch. Oh, and Mr. Chen? We've called off our search. Consider it a gesture of good faith. After hanging up, Marcus stared at his reflection in the dark computer monitor. He'd started this to protect his family from a single threat. Now he was being recruited to wage digital war on a larger scale. Sarah found him there an hour later, still lost in thought. "Can't sleep?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Just thinking. About the detective who visited your office." Tyler mentioned it. Marcus turned to face his wife. In the moonlight, he could see the concern in her eyes. "Sarah, what I did protected our daughter," she finished. "I know what you did, Marcus. I'm not stupid, and I'm not sorry you did it." The detective said, "The detective didn't watch our baby fight for her life because some entitled brat wanted to play revolutionary." Sarah's voice was steel. "You did what you had to do, what I couldn't do. Just be careful. Lily needs her father." They stood together in the darkness, understanding passing between them without words. Marcus had crossed lines, used skills meant for battlefields on fellow citizens. But faced with the same choice, he'd do it again. The war wasn't over. Justice Seeker might have backed off, but Detective Walsh was still investigating. The job offer from Prometheus still hung in the air. And somewhere out there, other groups were planning actions that might hurt innocent people. Marcus Chen had become something he'd never intended, a digital vigilante operating in the shadows of Portland. The question now was whether he'd remain a protector of his family or evolve into something larger and potentially darker. Time would tell, but for now, he had a daughter to raise and a wife to love. Everything else was secondary to that mission. Victoria Ashford didn't wait long to make her next move. 3 days after their initial phone call, she appeared at Chen Security Solutions, dressed like she'd stepped out of a Fortune 500 boardroom charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Silver hair pulled back in a style that suggested power rather than age, and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Chen," she said, extending a manicured hand, "I thought it best we discuss our proposition in person." Marcus had Tyler continue the meeting he'd been leading, then showed Victoria to his office. She settled into the client chair with the practiced ease of someone comfortable in any environment. "Before we begin," she said, placing a sleek device on his desk, "this conversation is protected by attorney-client privilege. I'm licensed to practice in Oregon, and Prometheus has retained me to explore potential legal services you might provide." "Clever," Marcus acknowledged, "though we both know I'm not a lawyer." "No, but cybersecurity consulting falls under legal services when properly structured." She smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. "We've done this before, Mr. Chen. We know how to protect our assets." Victoria laid out the offer with military precision. Prometheus wanted to create a new division, Ethical Cyber Operations. Publicly, it would offer defensive services to corporations facing digital threats from extremist groups. Privately, it would engage in more proactive measures. "Your actions against the Morrison Foundation were crude but effective," she said. "Imagine what you could do with real resources. Teams of analysts, legal cover, international reach. And in return, you'd handle problems for our clients, environmental extremists, targeting oil platforms, hacktivists, threatening critical infrastructure, foreign actors disguising themselves as activists. All legal, all sanctioned, all necessary for national security." Marcus leaned back, studying her. "You want me to be your digital hitman? I prefer cyber defense specialist. The pay is 7 figures annually, full benefits, and most importantly, legal immunity for past actions. We've already spoken with the federal prosecutor. They're willing to seal any investigation in exchange for your cooperation on certain matters." It was a good offer. Too good. "What's the catch?" Victoria's smile widened. You always were military intelligence. The catch is simple. Exclusive contract. You work for us, only us, and you follow orders. No more freelance vigilantism. No more personal vendettas. You become a corporate asset. And if I refuse? Then Detective Walsh continues his investigation with our full cooperation. We've been documenting your activities for months, Mr. Chen. Not enough to prosecute, perhaps, but enough to make your life very difficult. Your security clearances would be revoked. Your company would lose its government contracts. You'd find it very hard to provide for that beautiful daughter of yours. There it was. The velvet glove had come off, revealing the iron fist beneath. Marcus felt the familiar cold settle over him. You're threatening my family. Not at all. We're offering to protect your family from the consequences of your own actions. This is a generous offer, Mr. Chen. Others in our organization wanted to take a more aggressive approach. The implicit threat hung in the air between them. Marcus had made powerful enemies among the groups he'd targeted. Without protection, retaliation was a real possibility. I need time to consider. Of course. 48 hours should be sufficient? Victoria stood, collecting her device. We're not unreasonable people, Mr. Chen. We recognize talent when we see it. But talent without direction is just chaos. We're offering you purpose. After she left, Marcus called an emergency meeting with Tyler and his other senior staff. He laid out the situation without sugarcoating it. They've got us in a corner, Tyler said, running his hands through his hair. Take the deal or face investigation, possible prosecution, and loss of all our contracts. There's a third option, suggested Janet, their CFO. We could go public. Full disclosure about the highway incident, the cyber attacks, everything. Control the narrative. And go to prison, Tyler countered. Boss crossed lines. We all know it. Just because we understand why doesn't make it legal. Marcus listened to his team debate, but his mind was elsewhere. In Afghanistan, he'd learned that sometimes the only way out of an ambush was through it, but this wasn't combat. This was his daughter's future at stake. That evening, he took Lily to the park. Watching her toddle after ducks, laughing at everything and nothing, he felt the weight of his choices. Every decision he'd made had been to protect her. Now, those decisions threatened to cage him. "Daddy!" Lily called, holding up a particularly impressive stick she'd found. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, scooping her up. She smelled like sunshine and possibilities. His phone buzzed. Sarah, texting that dinner was ready. Normal life, continuing despite the wolves circling. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus told Sarah everything. She listened without interrupting, her artist's hands still for once. "So those are our options," he concluded. "Corporate servitude, legal prosecution, or running." "There's another option," Sarah said quietly. "We fight back." Marcus looked at his wife in surprise. Sarah was many things talented, compassionate, fierce when protecting their daughter, but he'd never heard her suggest anything like this. "These people think they own you because of what you did," she continued. "But what if we change the game? What if instead of being their asset or their target, you become something else? What did you have in mind?" Sarah pulled out her laptop, showing him a document she'd been working on. "I've been researching other people who've been in similar situations. Whistleblowers, reformed hackers, digital rights activists. There's a model here." The document outlined a bold strategy. Instead of hiding his actions, Marcus would rebrand them. Create a non-profit focused on protecting innocent civilians from extremist actions that endangered public safety. Work with law enforcement openly, Transform from vigilante to legitimate security consultant. It's risky, Marcus said, reading through her plan. Everything's risky now, but this way we control our story. We make you too public to threaten, too useful to prosecute. Marcus felt a spark of hope. Sarah's plan was audacious, but it had merit. If he could position himself correctly, he might slip through both Prometheus's grasp and the legal system's nets. Over the next day, they refined the plan. Marcus reached out to contacts in the media, specifically Zoe Sullivan, who'd covered the original highway incident. She was immediately interested in an exclusive story about the Portland cyber vigilante coming forward. He also contacted several lawyers specializing in whistleblower protection and digital rights. If he was going public, he needed legal shields in place first. The final piece was the most delicate. Marcus needed allies in law enforcement who understood the value of what he'd done, even if they couldn't officially condone it. He found that ally in an unexpected place. Detective Walsh himself. Marcus arranged to meet Walsh at a coffee shop in southeast Portland, neutral ground where they could speak freely. "You're either very brave or very stupid coming to me," Walsh said, stirring his black coffee. "Maybe both," Marcus admitted. "But I have a proposition." He laid out everything Prometheus's offer, their threats, and his alternative plan. Walsh listened with the patience of a man who'd heard many confessions. "You want me to help you avoid both prosecution and corporate slavery," Walsh summarized. "That's a tall order." "I want to work with law enforcement, not against it," Marcus said. "What I did to those groups, I can do that legally, with oversight, targeting actual threats. Domestic terrorists, child predators, human traffickers, groups that use technology to hurt innocent people." Walsh was quiet for a long moment. "You know what you're asking me to do? Stick my neck out for a vigilante. I'm asking you to help channel someone with skills into legal purposes. How many cases have you worked where digital evidence was the key? How many times have cyber criminals walked because you didn't have the technical expertise to catch them?" "More than I'd like," Walsh admitted. "I can help with that, legally, with full transparency." Walsh finished his coffee, thinking. "If you go public, really public, with full disclosure, and if you agree to work exclusively on law enforcement referred cases, I might be able to sell it to the DA. Deferred prosecution in exchange for community service. You'd be on a very short leash. Better than Prometheus's leash. Maybe. But understand one step out of line, one unauthorized hack, and you'll be in federal prison before your daughter learns to spell your name." It was a risk, but it was also hope. Marcus shook Walsh's hand, feeling like he'd just negotiated a ceasefire in a war he'd never meant to start. That night, Marcus called Victoria Ashford. "I've considered your offer," he said. "I'm declining." The silence on the other end was arctic. "That's unfortunate, Mr. Chen. I hope you've considered the consequences." "I have. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. Full disclosure of my actions, with context. I'm also announcing a new non-profit digital defense initiative. We'll work with law enforcement to protect civilians from cyber threats." "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Prometheus doesn't accept rejection well, Mr. Chen. We have long memories and longer reach. Then I guess we'll see who's better at digital warfare. A corporation with hired guns, or someone fighting for his family." The line went dead. Marcus looked at his sleeping daughter's picture on his desk. Tomorrow, everything would change. He'd either emerge as a reformed vigilante, working within the system, or he'd be destroyed by the forces he'd antagonized. But tonight he was still just a father who'd done questionable things for unquestionable reasons. Tomorrow's battles could wait until tomorrow. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Sentinel Hotel in downtown Portland. Marcus had chosen the location carefully neutral ground, professional setting, good security. Sarah had insisted on hiring a media coach for the morning, someone who specialized in crisis communications. Remember, the coach, a sharp woman named Diana, instructed, "You're not apologizing for protecting your family. You're taking responsibility for your methods while pivoting to legal alternatives." It's a fine line. Marcus adjusted his tie for the 10th time. He'd faced Taliban fighters and hostile intelligence operatives, but somehow, facing cameras felt more daunting. "You've got this," Sarah said, straightening his collar. "Just tell the truth. Let them see the father who was desperate to save his daughter, not the cyber vigilante the headlines will create." Lily was with Sarah's sister for the day, safely away from the media circus. Marcus had made sure their home security was doubled, just in case Prometheus or the targeted groups decided to retaliate. The conference room was packed. Zoe Sullivan sat in the front row, having broken the exclusive story in that morning's paper. Behind her, Marcus recognized reporters from every major outlet in the Pacific Northwest, plus some national correspondents who'd flown in overnight. Detective Walsh stood at the back, his presence both reassuring and sobering. He'd put his career on the line supporting Marcus's deal with the DA. This needed to go well. Marcus stepped to the podium, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes and cameras on him. He'd memorized his opening statement, but now the words felt fragile in his mouth. "My name is Marcus Chen," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm a father, a husband, a veteran, and the founder of Chen Security Solutions. I'm also the person responsible for the cyber attacks on several environmental extremist groups over the past year." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, the energy turning electric. Marcus raised a hand, waiting for quiet. "Please, let me finish. 8 months ago, my wife Sarah went into premature labor. As I rushed her to the hospital, protesters deliberately blocked Highway 26. They refused to move even when told it was a medical emergency. My daughter was born 11 minutes after we reached the hospital. The doctors said 5 minutes more and we would have lost her." He paused, letting that sink in. Several reporters had stopped writing, actually listening. In the weeks that followed, as I watched my daughter fight for life in the NICU, I made choices I'm not proud of. I used skills learned in military service to dismantle the organizations I held responsible. I invaded their digital infrastructure, disrupted their operations, and yes, I broke the law. But, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger, I also uncovered plans for more dangerous blockades, connections to groups planning property destruction, and threats to public safety that law enforcement was able to prevent because of information I provided. He clicked a remote, bringing up a slide showing statistics. In the past year, emergency response times in Portland have improved by 34%, partly due to the reduction in highway blockades. 3 planned arsons were prevented. Dozens of families didn't experience what mine did because extremist groups learned there were consequences for endangering innocent lives. "I'm not here to justify vigilantism," Marcus said, making eye contact with cameras. "I'm here to transform it into something legal and beneficial. Today, I'm announcing the formation of the Digital Defense Initiative, a non-profit that will work exclusively with law enforcement to protect civilians from cyber threats. He outlined the structure oversight from law enforcement, transparent operations, focus on defensive measures rather than offensive attacks. It was ambitious, perhaps impossibly so, but it was better than the alternatives. "I've reached an agreement with the district attorney's office," Marcus continued. "In exchange for full disclosure and future cooperation with law enforcement, I'll serve 2 years of supervised community service through the Digital Defense Initiative. Every operation will be approved and monitored by a panel including members of law enforcement, civil rights attorneys, and technical experts." The questions came fast and hard once he opened the floor. "Mr. Chen, do you consider yourself a hero or a criminal?" shouted one reporter. "I consider myself a father who made desperate choices. Whether that makes me a criminal is for the courts to decide. Whether it makes me a hero is for history to judge." "What about the people whose lives you disrupted? The protesters who lost their jobs, their organizations?" This from a young reporter with obvious sympathies for the environmental movement. Marcus had prepared for this. Every person affected by my actions was someone who had chosen to endanger innocent lives for their cause. I don't apologize for stopping them, only for the methods I used. Going forward, those methods will be legal and supervised. "Mr. Chen," Zoe Sullivan stood, commanding attention. "You mentioned Prometheus Security International attempted to recruit you. Can you elaborate?" This was the gamble. Naming Prometheus publicly would make a powerful enemy, but it also provided protection. They couldn't move against him openly now, without confirming his accusations. "Prometheus offered me a position conducting similar operations for corporate clients. When I refused, they threatened to support prosecution unless I accepted. I chose transparency over corporate servitude." The room buzzed with this new angle. Corporate private military contractors trying to recruit cyber vigilantes was a story that would run for weeks. More questions followed, technical details about his methods, speculation about other targets, demands for more information about Prometheus. Marcus answered what he could, deferred what he couldn't, and maintained his composure throughout. Finally, a reporter asked the question he'd been dreading. "What does your daughter think about all this?" Marcus's carefully constructed facade cracked slightly. "My daughter is 8 months old. She doesn't think about it yet. But someday, I'll have to explain to her that her father broke the law to save her life. I hope by then, the work I do legally will balance the scales." The press conference ended with Marcus announcing a website where the public could learn more about the Digital Defense Initiative and law enforcement could submit requests for assistance. He'd be starting his community service immediately, beginning with a series of cybersecurity seminars for local police departments. As reporters filed out, already filing their stories, Detective Walsh approached. "Well, you definitely swung for the fences," he said. "The DA's phone is already ringing off the hook. Half the calls support you, half want you arrested immediately. And the DA is hoping this gamble pays off. You've got a very short leash, Chen. One unauthorized keystroke and the deal's off." "Understood." Walsh studied him. "For what it's worth, I have a daughter too. 23 now, graduating from PSU next month. I understand why you did what you did. Just don't make me regret sticking my neck out." Over the next hours, Marcus watched the story explode across media. Portland Vigilante started trending. Op-eds were already being written, some calling him a hero, others a terrorist. The environmental groups released statements condemning him. Parents of sick children shared their own stories of being trapped in traffic during protests. Prometheus's response came that evening, A carefully worded statement from their PR department. Prometheus Security International denies any involvement with vigilante activities. We operate strictly within legal boundaries and condemn any form of unauthorized cyber warfare. It was a weak denial that only fueled more speculation. Several investigative journalists were already digging into Prometheus's activities. Victoria Ashford had underestimated the power of sunshine as a disinfectant. But the real test came at bedtime, as Marcus tucked Lily into her crib. "Daddy's going to be very busy for a while," he whispered, watching her sleep. "But it's all for you, little warrior. Everything's for you." Sarah joined him, slipping her hand into his. "How do you feel?" "Exposed. Vulnerable. But also free? For the first time in months. I'm not looking over my shoulder." "Think they'll leave us alone? Prometheus, the protesters?" "Not a chance. But now they have to fight in the open. I've got the high ground." It was an optimistic assessment. Marcus knew the coming months would bring challenges, legal hurdles, technical obstacles, attempts to discredit or destroy him. But he'd transformed from a lone vigilante into something more dangerous to his enemies, a legitimate operator with public support and legal backing. The war for his family's safety had entered a new phase, but Marcus Chen had learned long ago that the best defense was sometimes a very public offense. The retaliation began exactly 1 week after the press conference. Marcus first noticed something was wrong when his morning coffee shop visit took twice as long as usual. The credit card reader kept declining his cards, all of them. The barista, who knew him as a regular, waved him through with an apologetic smile, but Marcus knew this wasn't a coincidence. By the time he reached his office, Tyler was already in crisis mode. "Boss, we're under attack. Sophisticated stuff, someone's targeting our financial systems, client databases, everything. I've isolated our critical systems, but they're good. Really good." Marcus slid into his workstation, fingers flying across keyboards as he analyzed the attack patterns. This wasn't the amateur hour attempts from environmental groups. This was professional, coordinated, and specifically designed to cripple his business operations. "Prometheus," he muttered, recognizing certain signature techniques. They'd hired the best, given them resources, and pointed them at Chen security solutions like a digital missile. But Marcus hadn't survived 3 tours in Afghanistan by being an easy target. He'd prepared for this possibility, creating redundancies and fail-safes that even Tyler didn't know about. "Initiate Protocol 7, Marcus ordered. Tyler's eyes widened. "Boss, that'll take us completely dark. We'll lose all client connections for at least 6 hours. Better than losing client data. Do it." As their systems shifted to secure backups, Marcus's personal phone rang. Sarah. "Marcus, something's wrong. I just got a call from Lily's daycare. They said someone called claiming to be from Child Protective Services, asking questions about our family." Ice formed in Marcus's chest. Going after him was one thing, threatening his family was another. "Pack a bag," he said calmly. "Take Lily to your sister's. I'll meet you there in an hour." "Marcus, what's happening?" "Prometheus is happening. They're escalating." The next 48 hours were a blur of defensive actions and countermoves. The cyber attacks continued, growing more sophisticated with each wave. Marcus's team worked in shifts, patching vulnerabilities and tracing attack vectors. But Prometheus had learned from Marcus's own playbook. They didn't just attack digitally. Mysterious health department complaints shut down 3 of Marcus's favorite restaurants. His car was booted for unpaid tickets he'd never received. Sarah's art studio received notice of a surprise tax audit. "They're trying to make our lives hell," Sarah said, bouncing Lily on her hip at her sister's house. They'd been staying there for 2 days, afraid to return home. Death by 1,000 paperwork cuts. Marcus was running on 3 hours of sleep and military-grade coffee, but his mind was sharp with purpose. "They want me to break, to do something illegal so the DA revokes my deal. So what do? We hit back. Legally." Marcus had spent the last 2 days not just defending, but documenting. Every attack was traced, recorded, and analysed. The patterns that emerged were damning. IP addresses that traced back to Prometheus subsidiaries, attack techniques that matched known Prometheus contractors, even timing that corresponded with Victoria Ashford's travel schedule. He compiled everything into a comprehensive report and sent it to 3 people: Detective Walsh, Zoe Sullivan, and most importantly, the FBI's Cybercrime Division. The FBI response was faster than expected. Special Agent Diana Foster appeared at his temporary office within 6 hours, a stern woman with sharp eyes and no patience for games. "Mr. Chen, you're alleging that a major defense contractor is conducting illegal cyber warfare against American citizens on American soil. I'm providing evidence of exactly that," Marcus replied, handing over encrypted drives. "Every attack is documented. The attribution is solid. Prometheus crossed the line from corporate hardball to federal crimes." Agent Foster reviewed the data with increasing interest. "This is comprehensive. You do good work. I had good teachers. The Army invested a lot in my training." "I can see that." She closed her laptop. "We'll investigate. In the meantime, I'm assigning a protective detail to your family. If Prometheus is willing to go this far, we can't rule out physical threats." The FBI protection was reassuring, but Marcus knew it was only part of the solution. Prometheus needed to be shown that attacks would have consequences, legal consequences. Working with his lawyer and the Digital Defense Initiative's new board, Marcus crafted a strategy that would turn Prometheus's aggression into their downfall. Every attack they'd made had created evidence. Every dirty trick had left fingerprints. And Marcus had been very careful to stay within the law while documenting it all. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of Prometheus's contractors, facing FBI questioning, flipped. He provided emails, recorded conversations, and financial records showing Victoria Ashford had personally ordered the cyber attacks. "She called it pest control," the contractor told investigators. "Said Chen was a bug that needed squashing." The arrests began on a Thursday morning. FBI agents swept through Prometheus offices in 3 states, seizing computers and arresting 17 employees, including Victoria Ashford. She was photographed being led away in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally cracking. Zoe Sullivan's story in the next day's paper was brutal. Defense contractor arrested in cyber terror plot against Portland family. The details were damning a major corporation using military-grade cyber weapons against a whistleblower and his infant daughter. Prometheus's stock price crashed. Congressional hearings were announced. Other clients began pulling contracts, not wanting to be associated with a company that attacked American families. Marcus watched the coverage from his rebuilt office, Tyler and the team celebrating around him. But he felt no joy, only relief. "It's not over," he warned his team. "Prometheus has friends. The environmental groups are still out there. We've won a battle, not the war." As if to emphasize his point, his secure phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Chen." The voice was old, cultured, with a hint of southern drawl. "My name is Colonel Morrison, U.S. Army, retired. I understand you've been having some difficulties with Prometheus." Marcus straightened unconsciously. "Sir, I represent a group of former military officers who've been watching your situation with interest. We're concerned about private military contractors overstepping their bounds. We'd like to offer our support." "What kind of support?" "The kind that comes from 30 years of Pentagon connections and a strong belief that corporations shouldn't wage war on veterans' families. Prometheus forgot that attacking one of us means attacking all of us. It was an unexpected alliance, but Marcus had learned to accept help where he could find it. The brotherhood of veterans ran deep, crossing service branches and generations. Over the following weeks, Colonel Morrison's group proved invaluable. They had connections Marcus couldn't dream of: congressional staffers, Pentagon officials, journalists with military beats. Suddenly, Prometheus found itself facing not just legal troubles, but a complete breakdown of its government relationships. The final blow came when the Pentagon announced a review of all Prometheus contracts, citing concerns about corporate ethics and operational security. Billions in potential revenue evaporated overnight. Victoria Ashford, out on bail, made one last attempt to salvage the situation. She appeared at Marcus's office late one evening, alone and looking haggard. "You've destroyed everything I've built," she said, standing in his doorway. Marcus looked up from his desk, where he'd been reviewing security protocols. "You destroyed it yourself the moment you threatened my daughter. It was just business." "No, it became personal when you made it personal. You could have walked away after I refused your offer. Instead, you tried to destroy my family. How did you think that would end?" Victoria's composure finally shattered. "I've lost everything. My career, my reputation, probably my freedom. Are you satisfied?" Marcus thought of Lily, safe at home with Sarah, no longer needing FBI protection. "I'm satisfied that my daughter is safe. That's all I ever wanted." After Victoria left, Marcus sat in the quiet of his office, reflecting on the journey. From desperate father to vigilante to public figure to target to victor, it had been 8 months of war, fought in digital shadows and corporate boardrooms. But the cost had been high. His company had lost clients during the attacks. His family had lived in fear. His own soul carried new scars from battles he'd never wanted to fight. Sarah found him there an hour later, Lily asleep in her carrier. "The FBI called," she said softly. "They've officially closed the investigation into the highway incident. You're clear." Marcus reached for his daughter, holding her close. She stirred, but didn't wake, tiny fingers grasping his shirt. "What now?" Sarah asked. "Now we build." The Digital Defense Initiative is fully funded thanks to anonymous donations from Morrison's group. We've got law enforcement partnerships in 6 states. We can actually make a difference legally. And Prometheus? Is done. The company will probably fold within a year. Victoria will likely serve time. The others will scatter to the wind. Sarah sat on his desk, studying his face. "Any regrets?" Marcus considered the question honestly. "I regret that it came to this. That protecting you and Lily required war. But regret the actions themselves? Never." "Good." Sarah kissed his forehead. "Now come home. Your daughter needs her bath, and I need my husband back. The war's over, soldier. Time to be just Marcus again." As they left the office together, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months' peace. The threats were neutralized. His family was safe. His work could continue legally. But he kept his skills sharp and his systems ready. Because Marcus Chen had learned the hard lesson that peace was always temporary and the price of safety was eternal vigilance. For now, though, he had a daughter to bathe and a wife to love. Tomorrow's battles could wait until tomorrow. 6 months after Prometheus's fall, the Digital Defense Initiative had transformed from a desperate gambit into a respected organization. Marcus stood before a room full of FBI trainees at Quantico, teaching a seminar on cyber investigation techniques. The key to tracking sophisticated attackers, he explained, pulling up code on the screen, is understanding that everyone has patterns. Even chaos has structure if you look deep enough. His students, federal agents, local cops, even some international law enforcement took notes attentively. It still felt surreal, teaching in the same facilities where he'd once been investigated. "Mr. Chen," one trainee raised her hand, "how do you balance aggressive investigation with privacy rights?" It was the question that haunted his transformation. "By remembering that we're protecting people, not just catching criminals. Every technique I teach you can be abused. The difference between a protector and a predator is restraint." After the session, Special Agent Foster approached. She'd become DDI's primary FBI liaison and something like a friend. "Good class," she said. "You've got a gift for teaching, just sharing hard-learned lessons. Speaking of which, I have a case that could use your expertise. Child exploitation ring operating on the dark web. We've hit walls our technical team can't break through." Marcus's jaw tightened. If there was one type of criminal that made his blood boil more than those who endangered his family, it was those who hurt children. "Send me the files. Full DDI oversight, everything by the book." "Of course. We've learned to appreciate your thorough approach." Back in Portland, the DDI operated out of a converted warehouse in the Pearl District. What had started as Marcus and 2 volunteers had grown to 15 full-time staff, including former NSA analysts, reformed hackers, and even a few environmental activists who decided protecting people mattered more than ideology. Tyler ran the day-to-day operations, allowing Marcus to focus on high-priority cases and training. The organization ran on a unique model, half non-profit, funded by donations, half contractor, paid by law enforcement agencies for specific operations. "Boss," Tyler called as Marcus entered. "That trafficking case from Seattle PD? We cracked it. 32 arrests this morning." Marcus allowed himself a smile. In 6 months, DDI had assisted in over 100 cases, from cyber stalking to terrorist financing. Each success felt like redemption for his vigilante past. But redemption came with scrutiny. Marcus's every move was watched by multiple oversight bodies. Weekly reports to the DA, monthly reviews with a civil liberties panel, quarterly audits of every operation. "It's like being on parole," he told Sarah once. "It's the price of legitimacy," she'd replied, "and it's worth it." The child exploitation case Foster had mentioned proved to be their most challenging yet. The ring operated through encrypted channels, using sophisticated techniques that suggested professional backing. Marcus assembled his best team, including Janet, a former black hat hacker who'd served time before reforming, and David, an ex-NSA analyst who'd quit in protest over surveillance overreach, but still believed in targeted operations against real criminals. "This is ugly," Janet said, reviewing the initial data. "They're using military-grade encryption, blockchain transactions, and distributed hosting across 40 countries. "Then we get creative," Marcus replied. "But everything goes through legal channels. I want warrants for every breach. Documentation for every technique. The investigation took 3 weeks of 18-hour days. Marcus found himself falling into old patterns: the intense focus, the hunting mindset, the cold satisfaction of closing in on prey. But now it came with paperwork, oversight, and the constant reminder that he was one misstep from prison. The breakthrough came from David, who noticed patterns in the blockchain transactions that suggested connections to a larger criminal organization. "This isn't just a ring," he explained, pulling up link analysis on the main screen. "It's a service. They're providing infrastructure for multiple criminal groups." "Like Prometheus," Tyler observed. "Corporate evil hiding behind legitimate business." Marcus felt the familiar cold settle over him. Another corporation profiting from misery, thinking technology made them untouchable. But this time, he had resources and legal authority. Working with Foster and international partners, they mapped the entire network. Shell companies in the Caymans, servers in Eastern Europe, money flowing through cryptocurrency tumblers. "We need to hit them all simultaneously," Marcus told the assembled task force. 57 locations across 19 countries. If we miss even one, they'll scatter and rebuild. The operation, codenamed Guardian Shield, became the largest international cybercrime bust in history. At 600 GMT on a Tuesday, law enforcement struck simultaneously worldwide. Marcus watched from DDI headquarters as reports flooded in. Arrests in Bangkok, Berlin, Sao Paulo. Servers seized, children rescued, criminals in custody. 137 arrests, Foster announced as the final tallies came in. Over 300 children identified for rescue operations, and the infrastructure is completely destroyed. The room erupted in celebration, but Marcus felt only quiet satisfaction. This was what redemption looked like, using his skills legally to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The media coverage was overwhelming. "Portland's cyber vigilante turned hero," read one headline. "From lawbreaker to law enforcer, the Marcus Chen story," proclaimed another. But the attention came with problems. Environmental groups that had stayed quiet during his vigilante days now protested outside DDI headquarters, claiming he was a corporate tool suppressing legitimate activism. "You endangered my daughter," Marcus told one protester who confronted him. "I'm protecting other people's daughters. See the difference?" More concerning were the death threats, not from Prometheus remnants or environmental extremists, but from the criminal networks DDI helped dismantle. Marcus upgraded security at home and the office, but refused to be intimidated. "Daddy's job is dangerous," Lily asked one evening. At 18 months, she was starting to understand more than Marcus liked. "Sometimes," he admitted, holding her close, "but Daddy's careful. And he's protecting other little girls like you." "Hero?" she asked, pointing at him. "No, sweetheart. Just doing what's right." But others disagreed. The president personally called to congratulate him on Guardian Shield. Tech companies started consulting with DDI on security. Universities invited him to speak. "You've become respectable," Sarah teased one evening as they watched Lily play. The establishment's favorite former rebel. "Better than being their target," Marcus replied. The transformation was remarkable but incomplete. Marcus still woke with nightmares, not from Afghanistan anymore, but from the highway incident. He still checked traffic reports obsessively, still felt his heart rate spike when he heard protest sirens. Detective Walsh, now a friend and DDI board member, understood. "You can't change the past," he said over beers one evening, "but you're balancing the scales. Every child saved, Every criminal caught. It's redemption in action. Is it enough? It's never enough. That's what keeps us going. As DDI's first anniversary approached, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Skylar Morrison, the purple-haired protester who'd blocked the highway, stood in his office, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I've been following your work," she said without preamble. "What you're doing now, protecting kids, stopping real criminals. It's good work." Marcus studied her, seeing changes. Gone were the radical slogans and aggressive attitude. She looked older, more thoughtful. "What do you want, Skylar?" "To apologize. And to ask for a job." Marcus couldn't hide his surprise. "You want to work for me?" "I want to work for what you're doing now. I've spent a year thinking about that day on the highway. About your wife, your daughter. I was so focused on the cause that I forgot about people." She met his eyes. "I want to help protect people now, the right way." It was a test of Marcus's evolution. The old him would have thrown her out, maybe destroyed her life again for good measure. But the man he'd become saw an opportunity for mutual redemption. "Probationary period," he said finally. "You start in research, no field work. One step out of line, and you're gone." "Understood. And Mr. Chen, thank you." After she left, Marcus stood at his window, looking out at Portland's skyline. The city that had been his battlefield was now his to protect. The skills that had made him a vigilante now served justice legally. His phone buzzed. Sarah sending a video of Lily trying to climb the coffee table while shouting, "Up, up!" This was what victory looked like. Not the destruction of enemies, but the protection of family. Not operating in shadows, but working in the light. The Digital Defense Initiative had become more than redemption, it was evolution. Marcus Chen had transformed from vigilante to guardian, from lawbreaker to law enforcer. And somewhere out there, children were safer because of it. 2 years had passed since the highway incident. The Digital Defense Initiative had grown from a desperate plea bargain into one of the most respected cybersecurity organizations in the country. Marcus stood in their new offices, 3 floors in a downtown Portland high-rise, watching his team of 40 specialists work on cases spanning the globe. "Sir, the Attorney General is on line 1, his assistant informed him. Marcus took the call in his office, which Sarah had decorated with Lily's artwork alongside his military commendations and DDI achievement plaques. "Mr. Chen," the Attorney General's voice was warm but businesslike, "I'm calling to personally inform you that the President is awarding DDI the National Service Medal for your work on Operation Guardian Shield and subsequent cases." Marcus sank into his chair, genuinely stunned. Thank you, sir. This is unexpected." "Nonsense. You've revolutionized how we fight cybercrime. Your model is being replicated in 12 states. The ceremony is next month in Washington. Bring your family." After hanging up, Marcus sat quietly, reflecting on the journey. From desperate father to national hero, it seemed impossible. Yet here he was. Tyler knocked and entered, carrying a tablet. "Boss, we've got a situation. Remember the Earth Liberation Army we've been tracking?" Marcus's attention sharpened. The ELA was a new breed of environmental extremist, making Skylar's old group look like amateur hour. They'd already bombed 3 oil pipelines and caused 2 deaths. What have they done now? Nothing yet, but our intelligence suggests they're planning something big for the climate summit next week. Downtown Portland, thousands of attendees, including the vice president. Marcus pulled up the intelligence on his main screen. The ELA had learned from previous groups' mistakes. They used advanced encryption, operated in cells, and most concerning, they'd recruited people with military backgrounds. "Get the team together," Marcus ordered, "and call Foster at the FBI. This is beyond a simple protest." Within an hour, DDI's main conference room was filled with federal agents, local law enforcement, and Marcus's top analysts. The wall screens showed everything they'd gathered on the ELA financial records, communication patterns, known members. "They're planning something they call the Reckoning," Janet explained, highlighting intercepted communications. "We haven't broken their main encryption yet, but peripheral chatter suggests mass casualties are acceptable to them." "Acceptable?" Detective Walsh, now Portland's deputy chief, leaned forward. "We're talking about terrorism, not activism." Marcus studied the data, his tactical mind working through possibilities. The ELA had studied DDI's methods, implementing countermeasures that made traditional cyber tracking difficult. "We need a different approach," he announced. "They're expecting us to fight them in cyberspace, but every group has human vulnerabilities." He pulled up social network analysis, showing connections between known ELA members and their associates. Skylar, he called to their newest senior analyst, who'd proven herself invaluable over the past year. "You understand how these groups think. Where's their weakness?" Skylar studied the data with the intensity of someone seeking redemption. "There, Michael Torres. He's dating an ELA cell leader, but isn't fully committed. See his social media? He's questioning their methods. Can we turn him? Maybe. He's got a daughter from a previous relationship. That's leverage, not threatening her, but appealing to his parental instincts." It was delicate work, the kind that required human intelligence rather than digital warfare. Working with the FBI, they approached Torres carefully, showing him evidence of what the ELA was really planning. "This isn't about the environment anymore," Foster told him during the intervention. "They're planning to bomb the summit. Hundreds could die, including children at the daycare center next door." Torres broke, providing crucial intelligence. The reckoning was worse than imagined coordinated bombs at the summit, cyber attacks on the power grid, and assassinations of key climate negotiators they deemed too moderate. "We have 48 hours, Marcus announced to the task force. "We need to stop this without tipping them off." What followed was the most complex operation DDI had ever undertaken. Marcus coordinated with agencies across the country, tracking ELA cells while maintaining absolute operational security. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lily, now 3, and visiting the office with Sarah, pointed at a map on Marcus's screen. "Pretty colours," she exclaimed. Marcus looked closer at what she was seeing, the heat map of encrypted communications he'd been staring at for hours. But Lily was right. There was a pattern in the colours, a visual representation he'd been too focused on details to see. "Out of the mouths of babes," he muttered, recognizing the pattern. The ELA was using stenography, hiding messages in image files. Once he knew what to look for, the encryption fell apart. The summit morning arrived with Portland on high alert. DDI's command center looked like a military operation, with feeds from hundreds of cameras and real-time intelligence flowing in. "All teams in position," Marcus announced over comms. He was on site, coordinating from a mobile command unit. "Remember, we want them alive. Intelligence is the priority." The first cell was taken down at 800, attempting to plant devices in the convention center. The second fell at 823, their cyber attack thwarted before it could begin. By noon, 17 arrests had been made without a single shot fired. But the leader, a former Marine named James Crawford, remained at large with a dead man's switch connected to multiple bombs. "I've got eyes on Crawford," reported Agent Chen, no relation, one of DDI's field operatives. He's in the parking garage, level B3. He's got the trigger in his hand. Marcus made a decision that would have been unthinkable years ago. I'm going in. Keep everyone else back. Sir, that's not. I'm the only one here with EOD training. Stand by. Marcus entered the garage carefully, hands visible, no weapons. Crawford stood near a van packed with explosives, finger on the trigger, sweat pouring down his face despite the cool temperature. James, Marcus said calmly. Master Sergeant James Crawford, Bronze Star recipient, 2 tours in Iraq. This isn't you. You don't know me, Crawford snarled. The system failed us, failed the planet. Sometimes violence is the only answer. I used to think that too, Marcus replied, taking a careful step closer. Blocked highways, disrupted organizations, hurt people, in the name of protecting my family. You know what I learned? Crawford's hand trembled. What? That every action has a face. Right now, there are kids in that daycare center. 3-year-olds like my daughter. You kill them, and you're not a warrior anymore. You're just another terrorist. The cause? Fuck the cause, Marcus said sharply. Causes don't have faces. Those kids do. Your dead man's switch, I've seen the schematics. 15-second delay after release. You die here, and I've got time to warn them. You'll die for nothing. Crawford's resolve wavered. Marcus saw the moment of doubt and pressed on. You want to save the planet? Do it alive. Do it legally. Hell, come work for me. Use your skills to catch the real villains, the ones dumping chemicals, trading in endangered species, destroying ecosystems for profit. But not like this. Not with kids' blood on your hands. The standoff lasted 30 seconds that felt like hours. Then Crawford slowly set down the trigger and raised his hands. I need help, he whispered. The anger, I can't control it anymore. I know, Marcus said, signaling the arrest teams. I've been there, but there's another way. There's always another way. The media coverage of the prevented attack was overwhelming. Digital Defense Initiative Saves Climate Summit dominated headlines. The president called personally to congratulate Marcus. But in his office that evening, Marcus felt the weight of how close they'd come to disaster. Lily played with blocks on his floor while he filed reports. Daddy saved people? She asked, looking up at him. Daddy and his friends stopped some bad people, he confirmed. Like superheroes? Marcus lifted her onto his lap. No, sweetheart. Like people who care. That's better than superheroes. The Crawford incident led to a new DDI initiative, recruiting and reforming extremists from all sides. Former radicals who understood the mindset but had chosen legal paths. You're building an army of reformed vigilantes, Walsh observed during a board meeting. I'm building a bridge, Marcus corrected, between the anger that drives extremism and the channels that create real change. Sarah supported the expansion, though she worried about the risks. You're making enemies on all sides now. Environmental extremists, corporate criminals, international syndicates. Better than making enemies of my conscience, Marcus replied. The National Award ceremony in Washington was surreal. Marcus stood in the East Room of the White House, Lily in a tiny dress, and Sarah radiant beside him, as the president spoke about service and redemption. Marcus Chen represents the best of American reinvention, the president said. From soldier to civilian, from vigilante to guardian, from lawbreaker to law protector. His journey reminds us that our worst moments don't define us, our response to them does. Receiving the medal, Marcus thought of that desperate drive on Highway 26. How fear for his family had driven him to darkness, and how that same love had pulled him back to the light. The ceremony reception was filled with officials wanting to discuss replicating DDI's model. Marcus found himself advising senators and cabinet members on cybersecurity policy. "You've come a long way from hacking protesters' phones," Foster observed, joining him on the White House balcony. "Same skills, different application," Marcus replied, "though I sometimes miss the simplicity of just protecting my family." "You still are, just on a larger scale." As if to emphasize the point, Marcus's secure phone buzzed. A new case: human traffickers using cryptocurrency to move money. Children at risk. Time sensitive. "Duty calls?" Foster asked, seeing his expression. "Always." The flight back to Portland was quiet, Lily sleeping across both parents. Sarah leaned against Marcus's shoulder, medal case in her lap. "No regrets?" she asked. "None that matter," Marcus replied. "Every choice led us here, led to this." He gestured at their sleeping daughter, at the medal, at the life they'd built. "Even the illegal parts." "Especially those. They taught me the value of working within the system, the power of legitimate authority, the importance of accountability." DDI's success had spawned imitators nationwide, but none matched the original's effectiveness. The secret, Marcus knew, wasn't just technical skill. It was understanding both sides, the desperation that drove people to extremism, and the patience required for legal solutions. His phone showed 17 new cases waiting for review. Cyberstalkers, child predators, terrorist financiers, evil adapting to the digital age. But so was justice, with DDI leading the charge. "We should take a vacation," Sarah suggested, "somewhere without cell service." "After the trafficking case," Marcus promised, knowing there would always be another case. But that was the price of redemption. You couldn't just apologize for past sins. You had to actively balance the scales. Every child saved, every terrorist stopped, every criminal caught legally was another weight on the positive side. The man who'd once hacked protesters to save his daughter now protected thousands of daughters. The skills remained the same, but the application had evolved from personal vendetta to public service. As Portland's lights appeared below them, Marcus felt the satisfaction of a mission not completed but transformed. The war for his family's safety had become a war for all families' safety. And Marcus Chen, former vigilante turned guardian, wouldn't have it any other way.